I walked into my husband's office and found my sister sitting on his lap. What I did next made. My name is Beverly, and I am 32 years old. 6 years of what I thought was a perfect marriage to Carl shattered in a single moment. Today was supposed to be special. I planned to surprise him with his favourite lunch at his office. Instead, I was the one surprised. My sister Elaine, who had been staying with us after her breakup, was sitting on his lap. Their embrace was unmistakable. 5 words I never thought I would say to him. And what happened after changed everything. Before I tell you how my world collapsed, let me know where you are watching from and hit that subscribe button if betrayal stories strike a chord with you. Life with Carl had been everything I dreamed of since the day we met. I built my career as a marketing executive at one of the top firms in the city, climbing the corporate ladder with determination and grit. My professional life was thriving, but my personal life had been a series of disappointing relationships until Carl walked into that industry conference 6 years ago. I still remember the moment our eyes met across the crowded exhibition hall. Carl stood tall at the competing firm's booth, his confident smile drawing me in immediately. He had this way of making everyone feel like they were the only person in the room, and when he focused that attention on me, I was captivated. After exchanging business cards, he called me that very evening to ask me out for coffee. Our first date turned into a 5-hour conversation. By the end of the night, I felt like I had known him my entire life. Carl was intelligent, ambitious, and seemed to understand me in ways no one else ever had. We shared the same dreams of success travel and eventually building a family together. The whirlwind romance progressed quickly. Within 3 months, we were practically living together. By 6 months, he proposed during a weekend trip to the coast. I said yes without hesitation. 10 months after our first meeting, we were married in a beautiful ceremony, surrounded by friends and family. My sister Elaine was my maid of honour, beaming with what I thought was genuine happiness for me. After the wedding, we bought our dream home in the suburbs. It was a charming colonial with a wraparound porch and enough bedrooms for the children we planned to have. Every weekend, we worked on making it truly ours. Carl installed bookshelves in the living room while I planted a garden in the backyard. We hosted dinner parties, joined the neighbourhood association, and built what everyone saw as the perfect life. Our routine was comfortable and loving. Weekday mornings started with coffee together before heading to our respective offices. Evenings were for cooking dinner together, sharing stories about our days, and planning our future. Weekends were filled with home improvement projects, hiking trips, or simply relaxing in each other's company. I truly believed I had found my forever person. About a year ago, we decided it was time to start trying for a baby. We both wanted children, and approaching my early 30s, I felt ready to become a mother. We transformed one of the spare bedrooms into a potential nursery, painted in gender-neutral yellows and greens. I downloaded ovulation tracking apps and began taking prenatal vitamins. Carl seemed just as excited as I was, often bringing home tiny baby shoes or stuffed animals he could not resist buying. But as months passed without a positive pregnancy test, a subtle tension began creeping into our relationship. Each month when my period arrived, the disappointment hung heavy between us. We tried to stay positive, but I could sense Carl becoming frustrated. Our once spontaneous, intimate life became scheduled around fertility windows, losing the passion that had once come so naturally. After 8 months of trying, my doctor suggested some initial fertility tests for both of us. The results showed nothing conclusively wrong, just what they called unexplained infertility. The recommended next steps involved expensive treatments that we debated pursuing. These conversations sometimes ended in arguments with Carl, questioning if we were rushing things, and me feeling like my biological clock was ticking louder each day. Throughout these challenges, my relationship with my sister Elaine had been a source of support. 2.5 years younger than me, Elaine and I had always been close despite our different personalities. While I was the responsible, organised older sister, Elaine was free-spirited and spontaneous. She worked as a freelance graphic designer, moving between jobs and relationships with an ease I sometimes envied. 3 months ago, Elaine went through a particularly bad breakup with her boyfriend of 2 years. She discovered he had been cheating on her with a co-worker. Heartbroken and unable to afford her apartment alone, she called me in tears. Without hesitation, I invited her to stay with us until she got back on her feet. Carl agreed, saying family should stick together during tough times. Having Elaine in our home brought a new energy. She helped cook elaborate dinners, suggested weekend activities, and often stayed up late talking with me like we did as teenagers. Carl seemed to enjoy having her around too, laughing at her jokes and engaging in debates about movies and politics. I was grateful that my husband and sister got along so well. Looking back, there were signs I should have noticed. Carl began working later at the office, texting that he had projects that could not wait. Elaine suddenly became interested in her appearance in ways she had never been before. Buying new clothes and spending extra time on her makeup, even on days she worked from home. There were whispered phone conversations that stopped when I entered rooms explained away as work calls or discussions with friends. The fertility struggle had taken a toll on my self-confidence, and I began wondering if Carl was losing interest in me. So I decided to plan a special surprise to reconnect with my husband. I would show up at his office with a homemade lunch of all his favourites, and perhaps spend some quality time together in the middle of a work day. The morning of what would become the worst day of my life, I woke up early. Carl had already left for an important meeting, and Elaine was supposedly heading to a client consultation. I spent hours preparing Carl's favourite meal: grilled chicken with his mother's secret marinade recipe, roasted vegetables and chocolate chip cookies for dessert. I packed everything carefully in containers, added a bottle of sparkling cider, and even tucked in a handwritten love note. I dressed in the blue dress he always complimented, applied makeup carefully, and styled my hair. Looking in the mirror, I felt hopeful that this small gesture would help bring back the spark that had been fading. I had no idea that in just a few hours, that hope would be shattered beyond repair. The drive to Carl's office building downtown took about 30 minutes. I hummed along to the radio, rehearsing in my mind how I would surprise him. Maybe I would send a text asking for his lunch schedule, then show up regardless of his answer. Or perhaps I would simply appear at his office door, knock softly, and watch his face light up when he saw me. I pulled into the visitor parking garage, attached to the gleaming glass tower where Carl worked as a financial advisor. His firm occupied 3 floors near the top of the building, with Carl's corner office offering impressive views of the city skyline. I had only visited a handful of times since he started working there 4 years ago, usually for holiday parties or to meet him before dinner dates. After grabbing the insulated bag containing our lunch, I checked my appearance one last time in the car mirror. My stomach fluttered with nervous excitement. This spontaneous visit felt like something from our early dating days, when we could not bear to be apart for even a work day. The security guard in the lobby, a friendly older man named Harold, according to his nameplate, smiled as I approached the desk. "Good afternoon, ma'am. How can I help you today?" "Hi, I am here to see Carl Mitchell in the financial department. I am his wife, Beverly." I held up my driver's license as identification. Harold checked his computer system. "Ah, yes, Mr. Mitchell is in today, 14th floor. Would you like me to call up and let him know you are coming?" "Actually, I am surprising him with lunch," I replied with a conspiratorial smile. "Could we keep this between us?" Harold chuckled and handed me a visitor badge. "Not a problem, Mrs. Mitchell. The elevators are just around that corner. Have a nice visit." Thank you, Harold. I clipped the badge to my dress and headed toward the elevators, my heels clicking against the polished marble floor. As I rode up to the 14th floor, I checked the lunch containers one more time, making sure nothing had spilled. The elevator doors opened with a soft ding, revealing the elegant reception area of Mitchell Roberts Financial Advisors. Modern art hung on slate-grey walls and sleek furniture created an atmosphere of sophisticated wealth. The receptionist, a young woman with immaculately styled hair, looked up from her computer. "Welcome to Mitchell Roberts. How may I help you?" "Hi, I am Beverly Mitchell Carl's wife. I brought him lunch as a surprise." Recognition flickered across her face. "Oh, Mrs. Mitchell, it is lovely to meet you. Mr. Mitchell is in his office. Would you like me to announce you?" "If you do not mind, I would love to surprise him," I said. She smiled. "Of course. His office is down the hallway to the right, last door on the left, the one with the oak door." "Thank you so much." I adjusted my grip on the lunch bag and headed down the hallway she indicated. The office was quieter than I expected for a Tuesday afternoon. A few people glanced up from their cubicles as I passed, offering polite smiles before returning to their work. My heart began beating faster as I approached Carl's office. The oak door was closed, but a sliver of light showed underneath. He was definitely in. For a brief moment, I hesitated, wondering if I should knock after all. What if he was in a meeting or on an important call, but the desire to see his surprised expression won out? I turned the handle quietly and pushed the door open. The sound that first registered was not visual, but auditory. A soft moan followed by heavy breathing. My brain struggled to process what my eyes were seeing. My sister Elaine was straddling my husband in his large leather office chair. Her skirt was hiked up around her waist. Carl's hands were gripping her hips, guiding her movements. Their mouths were locked together in a passionate kiss, completely oblivious to my presence. Time seemed to stop. I stood frozen in the doorway, unable to move or speak. The lunch bag slipped from my fingers, hitting the floor with a thud. The sound finally alerted them to my presence. They broke apart instantly. Elaine whipped her head around her eyes, widening in horror when she saw me. Carl's face drained of colour. For what felt like an eternity, we all remained perfectly still, locked in a tableau of betrayal. "Beverly!" Carl finally choked out, pushing Elaine off his lap. She stumbled to her feet, hastily pulling down her skirt. "This is not what it looks like." A hysterical laugh almost escaped my throat at the absurdity of his words. Not what it looked like, it was exactly what it looked like. My husband and my sister, the two people I trusted most in the world. "Bev, please," Elaine began, tears already streaming down her face. "We never meant for this to happen." I felt oddly calm as I looked between them. The initial shock was giving way to a cold, clear understanding. This was not a one-time mistake. The familiarity of their movements, the comfort they displayed with each other's bodies, told me everything I needed to know. This had been going on for some time right under my nose in my own home. Carl stood up, adjusting his dishevelled clothing. "Beverly, let me explain. We can work through this. It was a mistake. A terrible mistake." My voice, when I finally found it, sounded foreign to my own ears. Steady, cold, and final. I looked directly into Carl's eyes as I spoke 5 simple words. "I want a divorce. Goodbye." I turned and walked out, closing the door softly behind me. I heard them calling my name, but I kept moving. Past the curious stares of Carl's co-workers, past the receptionist who looked up in confusion, into the elevator, where I pressed the lobby button with a shaking finger. Harold, the security guard, noticed my expression as I passed his desk. "Everything all right, Mrs. Mitchell?" I handed him my visitor badge without stopping. "No, but it will be." I walked to my car on legs that threatened to give out at any moment. Somehow, I managed to get inside and close the door before the first sob tore from my throat. The drive home passed in a blur. I have no memory of traffic lights or other cars, just the rhythmic swish of windshield wipers clearing my tears. My mind replayed the scene in Carl's office on an endless loop. Each replay revealed new painful details. The lipstick smeared across Carl's collar, the familiar birthmark on Elaine's thigh visible where her skirt had ridden up, the framed photo of our wedding day on Carl's desk, our smiling faces witnessing their betrayal. Random happy memories flooded my consciousness now, tainted with suspicion and doubt. The night Carl and Elaine stayed up talking about books while I fell asleep early. The Sunday morning I went to brunch with friends, while they stayed home claiming hangovers from the previous night's dinner party. The business trip Carl took last month to Chicago, coincidentally when Elaine also had a client meeting out of town. Had they been laughing at me this entire time? My wedding ring felt like it was burning my finger. I yanked it off at a stoplight and shoved it into the glove compartment. 6 years of marriage reduced to nothing in a single moment. My chest felt hollow, as if something vital had been scooped out. When I finally pulled into our driveway, I sat staring at the house we had chosen together. The home where we were supposed to raise our family, the porch swing where we drank wine on summer evenings, the flower beds I had planted with such care. All of it suddenly felt like a stage set for a life that had never been real. I entered the house and went straight to our bedroom. With mechanical efficiency, I pulled out a suitcase and began filling it with essentials. Clothes, toiletries, important documents. I grabbed my laptop jewellery box and the emergency cash we kept in the nightstand. I had no plan beyond getting out before either of them returned. As I was zipping the suitcase, I heard the front door open and close. Quick footsteps pounded up the stairs. Elaine appeared in the doorway, makeup streaked down her face. "Beverly, please, let me explain," she pleaded, reaching for my arm. I recoiled from her touch as if burned. "Do not touch me. Do not speak to me." "It was not supposed to happen," she continued, her voice breaking. "We both feel terrible. It was just physical at first, but then—" "At first?" I repeated, my voice rising. "How long has this been going on?" Elaine looked down, her silence confirming my worst fears. "Get out of my way," I said, lifting my suitcase. "I never want to see you again." "Where are you going? This is your house," Elaine cried, following me down the stairs. "A house built on lies is not a home," I replied, surprised by the clarity of my thoughts, despite the chaos inside me. "Tell Carl I will have my lawyer contact him." "Lawyer Bev, please, we can talk about this as a family." The word family ignited a rage I had been too shocked to feel until now. I whirled around at the front door. "Family, you betrayed me with my husband. You lived in my home while sleeping with him. You are not my family anymore." I left her standing in the doorway, sobbing as I threw my suitcase in the trunk and drove away. With nowhere else to go, I called my closest friend Janet, my voice barely coherent through tears. "Beverly, what is wrong?" Janet's concerned voice came through the car speakers. "Can I stay with you for a few days? I cannot go home." "Of course. Are you okay to drive? What happened?" "I will tell you when I get there. Thank you, Janet." Janet lived in a small townhouse about 20 minutes away. By the time I arrived, my initial shock had given way to waves of nausea and dizziness. Janet took one look at my face and guided me inside without questions, settling me on her couch with a blanket and glass of water. When I finally managed to tell her what happened, Janet's expression shifted from shock to something else, something that looked suspiciously like confirmation. "You knew?" I asked, incredulous. Janet sighed, sitting beside me. "I did not know for certain, but I had suspicions." "Why did not you tell me?" My voice cracked with fresh betrayal. Last month at the Miller's party, I saw them outside on the patio. They were standing too close, and the way they pulled apart when I approached, it felt off. Then 2 weeks ago, I was downtown for a meeting and saw them coming out of the hotel marquee together. When I asked Elaine about it later, she said she had met Carl for lunch to discuss a birthday surprise for you. I buried my face in my hands. I have been so blind. No, Janet said firmly. You trusted the two people who should have been most trustworthy. Their betrayal is not your failure. My phone had been buzzing constantly since I left the house. 17 missed calls from Carl, 8 from Elaine, dozens of text messages I could not bear to read. I finally turned it off. That first night at Janet's, I did not sleep. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, my mind torturing me with images of Carl and Elaine together. How many times had they been intimate in our bed while I was at work? How many secret meetings had they arranged? Had they been planning to tell me, or would they have continued indefinitely if I had not caught them? By morning, the shock had crystallized into something harder. Anger began to replace the devastation. I turned my phone back on long enough to search for divorce attorneys making an appointment with Susan Blackwell, who specialized in high-conflict divorces. As the numbness wore off, one thing became clear: I would not be their victim anymore. I had been betrayed, but I would not be broken. The offices of Blackwell Family Law were located in a converted Victorian home downtown. The interior balanced professionalism with comfort, clearly designed to put clients at ease during what was typically the worst period of their lives. Susan Blackwell herself was a woman in her 50s with sharp eyes and an air of unwavering competence. Her handshake was firm as she welcomed me into her office. "Mrs. Mitchell, please have a seat. I understand you are seeking advice regarding a divorce." I settled into the leather chair across from her desk. "Yes, I discovered my husband having an affair with my sister yesterday." If Susan was shocked, she did not show it. She simply nodded and opened a notepad. "I am sorry you are going through this. Let me assure you that nothing you tell me leaves this room. Now tell me about your financial situation." For the next hour, I detailed our assets, the house we owned together, our retirement accounts, Carl's position at the financial firm, and my marketing executive role. I explained that Elaine had been living with us and my current temporary housing arrangement with Janet. "Your first priority needs to be protecting your financial interests," Susan advised. "Men like your husband often try to hide assets once they know divorce is imminent. Do you have access to all your accounts?" A chill ran through me. "We have separate accounts for our individual incomes plus joint checking and savings accounts. I suggest you immediately transfer your portion of the joint accounts into a new account at a different bank. Not all of it, just what you can clearly document as your contribution. Also, gather all financial records you can access: tax returns, investment statements, property documents. Do this before he realizes you are serious about the divorce." I nodded, making mental notes. "What about the house? Do not move anything major from the home yet beyond your personal belongings. That could be construed as dissipation of marital assets. Document everything in the house with photos. We will handle the property division through proper legal channels." As I left Susan's office with a folder of information and a list of immediate actions, my phone rang. It was my bank calling to verify a large transfer attempt from our joint savings account. Carl was already trying to empty our accounts. "Do not authorize that transfer," I instructed the bank representative. "I will be coming in personally today to discuss this account." The next 3 hours were a whirlwind of financial damage control. I visited our bank, provided documentation of my income contributions to our joint accounts, and opened new accounts at a different institution. I changed passwords on all my personal accounts and credit cards. I called my company's HR department to remove Carl as my insurance beneficiary. While I was finishing at the bank, Janet texted that Carl had shown up at her house looking for me. "He seems desperate. Should I tell him anything?" Just that I am safe and do not want to speak with him, I replied. I was pulling out of the bank parking lot when my phone rang again. Carl's number. After letting it go to voicemail 3 times, I finally answered on the 4th call. Beverly, thank God. Where are you? We need to talk about this. His voice sounded ragged. There is nothing to talk about, Carl. I have seen an attorney. Please do not contact me again, except through legal counsel. You cannot be serious about divorce. His tone shifted from pleading to indignant. It was a mistake. You are overreacting. Something inside me snapped. Overreacting, I found you having sex with my sister in your office. This was not a drunken one-night stand, Carl. This was a calculated betrayal by the 2 people I trusted most. You have not been emotionally available for months, he countered, his voice hardening. All you cared about was getting pregnant. Do you know what that pressure did to me, to us? I nearly drove off the road at his words. So this is my fault, because I wanted the family we both said we wanted. That is not what I meant, he backpedaled. Elaine was there when you were not. She listened. She understood. I hope you and my sister will be very happy together, I said coldly. My lawyer will contact you. I hung up and pulled over, hands shaking too badly to drive. How dare he blame me for his betrayal? The fertility struggles had been difficult for both of us, but to use that as justification for sleeping with my sister was beyond contemptible. When I checked my email later that day, I found a long message from Elaine. The subject line read simply, "Please read this." Bev, I know nothing I say can undo the pain I have caused. What you saw was inexcusable. It was just one mistake in a series of bad judgments. Carl and I never meant for this to happen. It started as innocent conversations when you were working late. Then one night we had too much wine while you were at your conference in Denver. We both regretted it immediately, but somehow we could not stop. I know you will never forgive me, but please know how sorry I am for betraying you. You are my only sister and I love you. Elaine. Just one mistake. The blatant lie infuriated me. I did not respond, but I forwarded the email to Susan as evidence. That evening, while reviewing our credit card statements for my divorce documentation, I discovered something that made my blood run cold. Hotel charges in Carl's name dating back 4 months. Jewelry purchases I had never received, weekend trips when Carl claimed to be at business conferences. This affair had been going on much longer than either of them had admitted. Even worse, I found a reservation confirmation for a romantic weekend getaway scheduled for next month, paid for on our joint credit card. They had been planning a vacation together while I was trying to save our marriage. My phone rang again this time, showing my parents' number. With a deep breath, I answered. Beverly, darling, what is going on? My mother's concerned voice came through. Elaine called us crying. She said there was a terrible misunderstanding between you 2. Of course, Elaine would spin this to make herself the victim. Did she tell you I caught her having sex with Carl in his office yesterday? The silence on the other end was deafening. Finally, my mother spoke, her voice uncertain. She said there was an incident, but that it was not what it looked like. She said you would not let her explain. Not what it looked like, I repeated incredulously. Mum, she was straddling my husband with her tongue down his throat. Their affair has been going on for months. I have the receipts to prove it. Oh dear, my mother murmured. Elaine made it sound like a one-time indiscretion. She said Carl initiated it and she got caught up in the moment. The realization that my own mother was considering Elaine's side felt like another betrayal. Mum, I do not want to discuss this further if you are going to defend them. I am filing for divorce and I need your support, not your doubt. Of course we support you, darling. This is just so shocking. Your father and I need time to process this. After ending the call, I sat on Janet's guest bed, feeling more alone than ever. The people I had trusted most had either betrayed me directly or were questioning my judgment. But beneath the pain, A steady resolve was building. I would not let them define my story. The following weeks were the darkest of my life. My leave of absence from work stretched from days into weeks as I struggled to function. The simplest tasks became monumental efforts. Getting out of bed, showering, eating. Each day was a battle against the crushing weight of betrayal and loss. Janet's guest room, while comfortable, was not a long-term solution. After 2 weeks, I found a small, furnished apartment with a month-to-month lease. The beige walls and generic furniture matched my emotional state, blank neutral and temporary. My world had shrunk to attorney meetings, therapy sessions, and long hours staring at the ceiling. Sleep came in brief, restless intervals haunted by dreams of Carl and Elaine together. I lost 15 pounds in 3 weeks, my clothes hanging loose on my frame. Carl's tactics became increasingly manipulative. When direct contact failed, he enlisted our mutual friends. Carl is devastated, they would say. He made a terrible mistake, but he loves you. At least hear him out. Some friends took my side unequivocally. Others suggested I consider forgiveness as if betrayal was something you could simply move past with enough effort. A few stopped contacting me altogether, uncomfortable with the messiness of taking sides. Each lost relationship was another small grief piled onto the primary wound. Through social media, which I could not bring myself to disconnect from entirely, I learned that Carl and Elaine were now openly together. A mutual acquaintance posted a photo from a restaurant downtown. There they were in the background, Carl's arm draped casually around Elaine's shoulder. The timestamp showed it was just 3 weeks after I discovered them. They had not even had the decency to be discreet. The final pretense of regret had been abandoned, replaced by a public display that felt deliberately cruel. I wondered if they had been waiting for an opportunity to be together openly, if my discovery had actually relieved them of the burden of secrecy. 5 weeks after that fateful day at Carl's office, I ran into them by horrible coincidence. I had forced myself to meet a colleague for dinner, attempting to rejoin the world of the living. The restaurant was across town, specifically chosen to avoid familiar places. Yet somehow, as I was leaving, Carl and Elaine were being seated at a corner table. Our eyes met across the dining room. Carl froze mid-sentence. Elaine turned to see what had caught his attention, her face draining of colour when she spotted me. I should have walked out immediately, head held high. Instead, I stood paralysed, watching as Elaine excused herself and approached me. "Beverly," she said, softly reaching for my arm. "You look. I have been so worried about you." I jerked away from her touch. "Do not pretend to care about me now." "I do care," she insisted, her eyes filling with tears. "What happened was unforgivable, but you are still my sister. I miss you. We need to talk about this eventually." Something inside me snapped. "Talk about what, Elaine? How you slept with my husband for months while living in my house? How you both lied to my face every day? Or maybe how you are now flaunting your relationship before our divorce is even finalized." My voice had risen, drawing attention from nearby tables. Elaine glanced around nervously. "Please lower your voice. Can we go somewhere private to discuss this?" "I have nothing to say to you in private or public," I replied. "Enjoy your dinner with my husband." As I turned to leave, Elaine grabbed my wrist. "Bev, please. I am trying to apologize. We never meant to hurt you. It just happened. You have to believe me." The absurdity of her statement hit me like a physical blow. "It just happened," repeatedly. "For months, that is not something that just happens, Elaine. Those are choices you both made every single day." Tears were streaming down her face now, creating a spectacle that had the entire restaurant watching. I know it was wrong. But I love him, Bev, and he loves me. Cannot you find it in your heart to forgive us?" The restaurant had gone silent. Carl was approaching now, his expression a mixture of concern and embarrassment. Not concern for me, I realised, but for the scene Elaine was creating. You want my forgiveness so you can feel better about yourselves, I said quietly. So you can tell yourselves you are not terrible people, but I do not owe you that peace of mind. I walked out, ignoring Carl calling my name. In my car, I broke down completely. Gut-wrenching sobs tore through me until I could barely breathe. It was the most public humiliation in a season of humiliations, and it had broken something fundamental inside me. That night, hitting what felt like rock bottom, I called my college friend Brenda in Los Angeles. We had drifted apart over the years, but she had sent a supportive message when she heard about the divorce. Unlike my local friends, she had no connection to Carl or Elaine, no complicated loyalties to navigate. I do not know how to do this, I confessed after explaining the restaurant encounter. I do not know how to rebuild a life from scratch at 32. Brenda's response was gentle but firm. You are not rebuilding from scratch, Bev. You are reclaiming what was always yours, your strength, your dignity, your future. They took your trust, but they cannot take those things unless you let them. The conversation shifted something in my perspective. The next day, I found a support group for people dealing with infidelity and betrayal. At my first meeting, I listened to stories that echoed my own pain. People who had discovered decades-long affairs, people betrayed by spouses and best friends, people who had lost their homes, their extended families, their social circles. One woman in particular, Donna, had been through an eerily similar situation 5 years earlier. Her husband and sister had also had an affair, but her story did not end in perpetual victimhood. She had rebuilt her life, started a successful business, and eventually found love again with someone worthy of her trust. The day I stopped seeing myself as a victim was the day my healing truly began. Donna told me after the meeting, your husband and sister did not break you. They revealed their own brokenness. That night, looking at my reflection in the bathroom mirror, I made a decision. I would no longer be defined by what had been done to me. This betrayal would be a chapter in my story, not the whole book. For the first time since walking into Carl's office, I saw a future that was not dominated by loss and pain. It was time to reclaim my life. With my newfound determination, I approached the divorce proceedings with strategic focus rather than emotional reactivity. Susan, my attorney, had discovered concerning patterns in our financial records that suggested Carl might have been preparing for a separation long before I discovered the affair. These withdrawals from your joint account, Susan pointed out during our meeting, $5,000 each month for the past 6 months, transferred to a separate account you were not aware of. He told me those were investments for our future, I replied, the irony bitter on my tongue. We will subpoena those records. If he has been hiding assets, the judge will not look favourably on that. Susan made another note in her file. Have you decided what you want to do about the house? I do not want it, I said firmly. Too many memories. I want it sold, and the proceeds divided according to our contributions. Armed with documentation of Carl's financial misconduct, we built a case that left little room for manipulation. When Carl's attorney proposed a settlement that would have left me with significantly less than my fair share, Susan countered with evidence that changed the negotiation dynamics entirely. Meanwhile, I returned to work with renewed focus. My temporary leave had given me perspective on my career as well. I had been so consumed with trying to have a baby and save my marriage that I had neglected my professional growth. Now I threw myself into new projects, rebuilding my confidence through tangible achievements. 3 months after the separation, an unexpected opportunity arose. Mitchell Financial Consulting, one of the main competitors to Carl's firm, reached out with a job offer. They were expanding their marketing department and wanted someone with my expertise in financial services marketing. The position came with a substantial salary increase and the title of marketing director. Taking the job would mean directly competing with Carl's company. It would be a clear statement that I was not only surviving, but thriving. After careful consideration and consultation with mentors I trusted, I accepted the position. The day I gave notice at my current firm was the first time I felt genuine excitement about the future in months. With my professional life gaining momentum, I turned my attention to the fractured relationships with my family. My parents had maintained an uncomfortable neutrality, unwilling to fully condemn Elaine while also trying to support me. Their attempts to keep the peace felt like a fundamental misunderstanding of the situation. There could be no peace where there was no justice. I invited them to dinner at a restaurant neutral territory for the difficult conversation ahead. They arrived looking apprehensive, my mother hugging me too tightly, my father patting my shoulder awkwardly. "You look well, Beverly," my mother offered as we were seated. "We have been so worried." "I am doing better," I acknowledged. "But I asked you here because we need to talk about Elaine." My parents exchanged glances. My father cleared his throat. "Your mother and I feel caught in the middle. She is our daughter too." "I understand that," I said carefully, "but I need you to understand something. This was not a misunderstanding or a one-time mistake. Elaine and Carl carried on an affair for months while she lived in my home. They lied to me daily. They betrayed me in the most intimate way possible." My mother's eyes filled with tears. "Elaine says it started innocently, that things just progressed. Affairs do not just happen, Mum. They require thousands of deliberate choices, thousands of lies." I took a deep breath. "I am not asking you to disown Elaine, but I am asking you to stop minimizing what she did. Stop asking me to reconcile with her, and please stop inviting us to the same family events." "But holidays," my mother began. "I will not be attending family gatherings where Elaine is present," I stated firmly. "That is my boundary. You can see us separately." My father looked troubled. "This rift cannot be permanent. We are family." "Elaine shattered our family when she chose to sleep with my husband. Those consequences are hers to bear, not mine to fix." Setting those boundaries was painful, but necessary. Some extended family members accused me of being unforgiving, of tearing the family apart. I learned to let those accusations slide off me. The truth was, I had not destroyed anything. I was simply refusing to pretend the destruction had not occurred. As the divorce proceedings continued, I made new connections through my support group and rediscovered interests I had neglected during my marriage. I joined a community garden project, finding solace in nurturing growing things. I took a weekend photography workshop, something I had always wanted to try, but Carl had dismissed as impractical. Small pleasures became significant victories. The first night I slept through without nightmares. The first time I laughed without feeling guilty about it. The first morning I woke up and did not immediately think of them. My therapist suggested I might consider dating again when I felt ready. The thought terrified me. How could I ever trust anyone after such a profound betrayal? Yet I recognized that isolating myself forever would be giving Carl and Elaine continued power over my life. 7 months after separation, I agreed to a coffee date with someone from my hiking group. It was awkward and uncomfortable, and I excused myself after 45 minutes feeling like a failure, but the simple act of trying felt like progress. I was not ready, but someday I might be. That possibility alone was something to hold on to. Through mutual connections, I learned that Carl was facing professional difficulties. An anonymous tip had led to an internal investigation at his firm regarding ethical violations in client account management. While I had no direct knowledge of his business practices, I was not entirely surprised. Someone capable of such personal betrayal would likely cut corners in other areas of life as well. I never confirmed whether the anonymous tip came from someone in my support group who worked in financial services, as I suspected. But when Carl was demoted following the investigation, I allowed myself a moment of satisfaction, not revenge exactly, but a reminder that actions have consequences beyond the immediate damage they cause. As I rebuilt my life piece by piece, I began to recognize that the betrayal, while devastating, had freed me from a marriage that was not what I thought it was. Had I never walked into Carl's office that day, I might have spent years or decades with a man capable of such deception. In a strange way, their betrayal had ultimately been a terrible gift, revealing a truth I needed to see. 1 year after the day that changed everything, I stood in the kitchen of my new home, arranging flowers for my housewarming party. The divorce had been finalized 4 months earlier, with terms that reflected Carl's infidelity and financial misconduct. The proceeds from selling our marital home had given me the down payment for this charming townhouse in a neighborhood I had always loved. My new place was entirely mine, decorated according to my taste alone. Bright colors replaced the neutral palette Carl had preferred. Bookshelves displayed novels he had considered frivolous. Art I loved hung on walls that had never witnessed betrayal. It was not just a home, but a statement of reclaimed identity. The doorbell rang, announcing my first guests. Janet arrived with a bottle of champagne and a warm hug. "It is perfect," she declared, looking around the space. "Completely you." Throughout the evening, my home filled with the people who had formed my support system during the darkest period of my life. My parents came, respecting my boundaries by attending without Elaine. Friends from work, my support group, and new connections I had made through various activities all celebrated this milestone with me. Later in the evening, Robert from my support group arrived. We had been dating cautiously for 2 months, both healing from betrayals that had left deep scars. He understood my trust issues without taking them personally. There was a gentleness to our relationship that felt healing rather than passionate, and I was learning that this slow, intentional connection might actually be healthier than the whirlwind romance I had experienced with Carl. As I moved among my guests, I overheard Janet telling someone about the karma Carl had experienced. According to mutual friends, his relationship with Elaine had imploded spectacularly 3 months after our divorce was finalized. He had apparently met someone else, leaving Elaine devastated and alone. Neither of them had been invited to my housewarming, of course, but their drama had a way of filtering back through shared acquaintances. 2 weeks earlier, Elaine had reached out again, asking to meet. Her email described her regret in painful detail, explaining how Carl had eventually treated her the same way they had treated me. She claimed to understand now the depth of pain she had caused and wanted a chance to apologize in person. I had considered the request carefully, consulting both my therapist and trusted friends. Ultimately, I declined, not out of lingering anger, but because I recognized that her desire for reconciliation was about alleviating her guilt rather than truly repairing what she had broken. Some betrayals permanently alter the landscape of a relationship. Forgiveness, I had learned, did not require restoration of trust or intimacy. As the evening wound down, I found myself on my small balcony with Robert, watching the sunset paint the sky in brilliant oranges and pinks. "How are you feeling?" he asked, his hand resting lightly near mine on the railing. "Grateful," I replied honestly. "A year ago, I could not imagine ever feeling whole again. But look at all this." I gestured toward the gathering inside. "I did not just survive, I rebuilt." "You should be proud," Robert said. "Not everyone finds their way back from that kind of betrayal." The hardest part was forgiving myself, I admitted, for not seeing the signs, for blaming myself for the fertility issues that Carl used as an excuse, for feeling like I had failed somehow. "But you know now that was never true," I nodded. "Their choices were never about my worth. They were about their character." Later, After all the guests had left, I walked through my new home, straightening cushions and gathering empty glasses. The evening had been a celebration not just of a new home, but of a new chapter. The pain had not disappeared entirely, and probably never would, but it no longer defined me. I had learned that betrayal reveals truths we might otherwise never see. About others, yes, but more importantly about ourselves, about our capacity to endure, to rebuild, to find joy again. My marriage had ended, but my story continued, and this time I was writing it entirely for myself. The greatest revenge was not anything I did to them, it was refusing to let their betrayal define the rest of my story. Have you ever experienced betrayal from someone you trusted completely? How did you recover and rebuild? I would love to hear your stories in the comments below. Remember to like this video if my journey resonated with you, subscribe for more real-life stories, and share with someone who might need to hear that healing is possible after betrayal. Thank you for listening to my story, and remember, sometimes what feels like an ending is actually the beginning of something better.